Hello and welcome to all the guests here at the Zambian Italian Cultural Center, the guests online, and I would like to start, of course, welcoming once again our dear friend, Professor Costantino D'Orazio, thanking him very much for being with us today. I would like to thank also the friends of the Zambia Italian Cultural Center for hosting us today in the framework of our very fruitful cooperation. Today is a webinar about Raphael Sanzio, another important artist of Italy, of the Italian history. And this webinar is a part of a cycle of cultural webinars that we have organized together with Professor Costantino D'Orazio, a cycle of webinars that cover many subjects, African and Italian arts, Michelangelo, Raphael, and also contemporary art with the artist Pietro Ruffo. I would like to flag to all our friends that all these cultural events are on our YouTube channel, so it is possible to watch again in case you missed the events. It is possible to watch them on our YouTube channel. We gather again in a virtual way because we still have to deal with the situation of COVID. And thinking about that, I was thinking, and I would like to share with all of you why we are we continue to organize these cultural events also in this time of the pandemic. The reason is that Italy is side by side with Zambia to support the Zambian people in the fight against COVID-19 and to help Zambian people to overcome this period. We do that in the framework of the European Union. I would like to recall that the European Union is giving around 16 million euros to Zambia, and a part of this part of these funds come from Italy. So Italy, in the framework of the European Union, is supporting Zambia with regard to this specific need, which is, of course, an emergency and is a priority. But while we do that, we consider that it is fundamental to be side to side with Zambia to support the growth of the country in a comprehensive way. We believe that Zambia has a lot to give to Italy for with its culture, with its resources, with its traditions, and Italy can do the same. So our commitment is to share with our Zambian friends our heritage, what we can share, what we learn from our artists, so that this can be mutually shared, and that's why we are doing this today as well. Today, we will listen to Professor D'Orazio about Raphael Sanzio, and I really like the title of this webinar, which is Behind the Scene, because this is an artist that had a very fascinating life, and I think that his life together with his art, with his art pieces can be of inspiration to all of us to address our most profound questions about life, about culture, about human relations, and about human beings. So I would like to thank you all again. I would like to say a particular welcome to my Japanese colleague, Ambassador Ryuta Mizuki, who is with us. I'm very happy to welcome you here, Ambassador, and his spouse too. And so, welcome again to all, and Costantino, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. The art of Raphael, the life of Raphael really affected his art a lot, even if it was a quite short life. But in 20 years, he managed to change completely the destiny of the history of art. He was born in this beautiful city, Urbino, the city that in the early 1500s, late 1400s, early 1500s, was called a city that looks just like a palace, or a palace that basically is as big as a city. And you can actually say from these pictures, from this photo, and you can still visit his home in Urbino, where you have the courtyard, where there were a lot of paintings and canvases passing by all the time. So he basically was born in an artistic family. He was born in Urbino, as you can see. Then, when his father died, to Perugia, to Siena, to Florence, and then he ended up to Rome when he was 25. So between 12 and 17, more or less, in 5 years, he learned to paint in the workshop. And then at 17, he became the actual owner of the workshop, and he signed the very first contract with his own name. And he started his career, his actual career. Now, look at this. Look at these two paintings, one next to the other. On the left-hand side of your screen, you can see one of the first painting signed by Raphael, this crucifixion that dates 1500. So Raphael is 17. On the other side of the screen, you have what we consider the last painting made by Raphael when he was 37. It's a painting dated 1520, and he's the transfiguration. So you have Jesus up on a mountain and the apostles down there on the ground. But look at them. Can you notice that they are completely different? I mean, they look like painted by two different painters. Not only that, it looks like there is a passage of generations from one painting to the other. Somebody is asking me, Cinder is asking me how Raphael died. I will tell you how he died. But you're right. If you have questions that pop up to your mind while I'm talking, please, for those that are connected, type them in the chat, the Q&A, or in the chat as you want, and I will answer them at the end of the story. But you will find the information about Raphael's death later on, because it's even a very ironic way of dying, if I may say so, about somebody that passes away. Anyway, we will get back to this information later. So these two paintings look like being done by two different generations. Raphael, in 20 years, so from 17 to 37, changed completely his style, left completely the style that he learned from his father, that he learned at the home in Urbino, and embraced other styles. As I told you before, he left the city of Urbino quite immediately, leaving the workshop opened at home, but he wanted to learn more because he understood that at the very beginning of the 1500s, there was something going on interesting for him in other city. So he goes to Perugia. He goes to Perugia because in Perugia, there was a great painter, maybe the most important painter in that year, the early 1500s, before the fame, the reputation of Michelangelo, Raphael, and Leonardo overwhelmed him. The name of this painter was Perugino, so from Perugia. And this is a fragment of a painting made by Raphael following the style of Perugino in Perugia, because Raphael goes to Perugia, knocks the door of Perugino and says, please, I want to know how to paint what the best commissioners, what the popes, what the dukes, the marquises want in that moment, because you, Perugino, worked for all of them. Perugino in the 1500s has 3 workshops opened, one in Perugia, his hometown, one in Florence, and one in Rome. Perugino is the one that 15 years before had coordinated the paintings of the Sistine Chapel in Rome before Michelangelo arrived. So what is the style of Perugino that Raphael learns? This is the project of a big painting commissioned to Raphael in the 1500s that this detail belongs to. So it's the coronation of San Nicolò da Tolentino. I'm showing you just the drawing because the painting has been cut in the 1700s. So it's only in fragments now, and it's scattered around the world in different museums. What can you see here? Exactly like the crucifixion that I showed you before, this crucifixion is organized in a symmetrical way. So you have the saint in the middle standing on the body of the devil, and you have a model on top with the crown that will become the Lord. So to show the position of the Lord, Raphael used one of the boys, one of the collaborators of the workshop, just to set the position. But what you have here is the perfect symmetrical organization of the scene. This was part of the style of the language of Perugino because it was a very quiet kind of painting that had to calm down the souls. Now, the interesting fact in the experience between Raphael and Perugino is that at a certain point, they both receive the same order. This is the marriage of the Virgin painted by Perugino. This is the marriage of the Virgin painted by Raphael. So they basically both received by 2 different commissioners the same order. So they had to paint the same subject, the same scene. Let's see how they solved this challenge. As you can see, they looked at each other. Well, a few years ago, before some documents got out of some archives, the art historians used to say that Raphael had looked at Perugino when he had to paint this scene. Because you can see, even from the first look, they look quite the same. Now we think that they actually worked in a parallel way, looking one at each other. What do they share? Well, for sure, they share the idea of having the figures on the first level, on the front, and then the square behind them, and the temple at the bottom. Well, what a story that is told in this painting. How got the Virgin Mary married to Joseph? Well, she was a young lady, a young girl, raised up in the temple. Then she was virgin, of course, and the priest of the temple, responsible of the temple, in order to pick, to decide, not what would have been the husband of a Virgin Mary, distributes to the young boys, young men of the town, sticks, like sticks with no roots, branches. And he says, the first one that will get back to me with flowers on the stick, he's going to be the husband of Virgin Mary. Of course, these flowers had to grow on the stick by miracle. So the first one that gets back with these flowers is Joseph. He was a wise man. God chose him because he was a wise man. And this is what you can see here. Look at the left hand of your screen. So you have Joseph with this, let's say, yellow skirt, yellow mantle, with the flowers. You have the priest in the center, and the Virgin Mary that is offering the hand to get the ring on the finger. Look at the other side. Look at the Raphael's version of that. The figures are exactly the same. Joseph in yellow and green, the Virgin Mary, and the priest. But can you see the difference? Can you see how Raphael moves the priest? And by moving the priest, he gets moving all of the figures, while the one of Perugino are perfectly set, the front line, all quite standing and without the same life and elegance that Raphael sets on into his figures. Then look at the square behind these figures. The square of Raphael, it looks quite deeper than the one of Perugino. This is because Raphael uses what we call a lower point of view. With this lower point of view, the square looks much larger. And the temple by Perugino does not fit into the figure. The temple by Raphael is perfectly kept into the figure, which means that the figure has got a much more balance, much greater balance than the one of Perugino. But then there is one more detail that, to me, set the absolute difference between these two versions of the same scene. What happens to the other boys, to the other guys that remained with their sticks down there without any flower? They're not that happy. There is one among these guys that is so angry that breaks the stick on his leg. Can you see them? Look at the left-hand side of Perugino's version. He's among the other guys. Look at the right-hand side of Raphael's figure. He's not surrounded by anybody. He's even in a frontal line. Now, let's get to the detail. Look how Raphael's version of this detail is much stronger. There is much more energy. The stick is about to be broken. The one by Perugino is a bit weaker. But there is another important difference. The figure by Raphael is moving in the front and is also almost exploring another dimension. Let's say a third dimension, a fourth dimension. He's almost like coming out of the painting. Remember about this detail, because we'll find it again when Raphael gets to Rome. So this is the story. The relationship between Raphael and Perugino ends up into a challenge that Raphael wins. Because right after this painting, Perugino loses a lot of field, loses a lot of reputation, because it's clear that there is a new generation that has something more to say to the cardinals, the nobles, the popes that want the avant-garde. This is quite interesting. Well, in the past, art and collectors have always promoted the avant-garde. Now it's different. Now we look at avant-garde with a kind of suspicion sometimes, and we prefer to collect ancient art because it's more secure. It has never been like that. Artists were always promoted by those that wanted something new. And Raphael, at the age of now he's 22, when he paints this painting, is ready to give the audience something new. Look at this. This is a fantastic proof of the talent, of the mature and clever and quick talent of Raphael. We call this figure the deposition, which we should actually say it's the transportation of the body of Jesus into his burial place. Raphael makes this scene, which have been painted many other times before by other artists. He turns this scene into a story with different episodes. For example, the antefact, so the fact happened before this moment, is told on top of the mountain, on the right-hand side of the painting, at the top. You have the Calvarius, the mountain, with the three crosses, the one for the thieves and the one in the center for Jesus. But you also have still the ladder. The ladder is still kneeling on the cross, and there is somebody that is, can you see him? I'm sure you can see, that is pointing out the cross, saying, you know, Jesus was there a few minutes ago. So there's a link to the antefact, to the fact right before. Then Jesus that it actually is literally transported. You have to think that in order to create this scene, Raphael made 16 drawings, 16 sketches, 16 different scenes that led him down to this final result. I will show you some of them because it's quite rare to see them. They are preserved into cabinets of museums, into deposits, so it's quite rare, but they're very interesting. Look at this. This is really a behind the scene, because this has never been showed in a kind of a public speech like this. It's only for scholars. Now, this is the first drawing, in which drawing you see that the Virgin Mary is crying with the body of Jesus on her lap. Now, let me just open a little story, tell you a little story. Who was the one that commissioned to Raphael this painting? It was a lady from Perugia. So Raphael is still in Perugia. This lady was called Atalanta Baglioni, and she was a member of one of the most important families of Perugia. These two families, the family Baglioni and the family Oddi, have been fighting one against the other for ages. Now, 7 years before Raphael painted this deposition, the son of Atalanta killed his uncle. That was somehow in between the two families, was related with the two families. So when he gets back, when the son of Atalanta, who was called the Grifonetto, goes back home and tells his mother, you know, mother, I killed uncle. She pushes him out of the house. She bans him. She said, I don't want to know anything about you. I just, I swear that you will not be part of this family anymore. So Grifonetto left Perugia. He went out of the walls of Perugia, and the moment he was there without any protection, he got killed as well by the competitors, by the opposers. Atalanta gets information about the assassin, and she just goes back home and reaches Grifonetto right at the moment in which he dies on her lap. So only 7 years after this tragedy, Atalanta is ready to ask Raphael to paint this scene in the memory of her son, which most probably Raphael painted his portrait in this guy that is transporting the body of Jesus. But if we go back to the first drawing, what we can see here most probably is the scene that Raphael figures out when he gets the story, when he knows about the story of Grifonetto. And the Virgin Mary is actually Atalanta crying in front of the body of her son. So this is the first image that gets to the mind of Raphael. But then he starts thinking that he has to move the figures more. The second drawing. Third drawing, look at here. Jesus is about to be moved now, pulling up by two figures. So the movement is growing by the time Raphael keeps on studying the scene. And then here, they lifted up the body of Jesus now, and the Virgin Mary is not anymore touching his body anymore. She's in the center. But then look at again, the body is actually moving now, and the Virgin Mary has been set on the right-hand side. She is like moving towards the body of her son, but only at the end we get this scene. Only at the end we get this scene. There is one detail that is always present in all of the drawings. Look at this. Look at the arm of Jesus, the right hand arm of Jesus. Here, here, here. Look at this here. So there is always this arm that is abandoned. And it's the detail that Raphael uses to give us the idea that Jesus is dead. This is not a common arm. This is not any other arm, but it's a copy of an ancient sarcophagus. This sarcophagus, there are many versions and many copies of this sarcophagus all around Italy. It's an ancient story of a mythological guy called Meleagro that is transported into his burial place. And it's become so famous that it's been copied by many, many artists. So Raphael looks at the ancient art in this moment, but he also looks at, look at this, also at the anatomy. So the Virgin Mary, in the final version of the deposition, is fainting, as you can see. How did Raphael got the position of the Virgin Mary? From a skeleton. He used a skeleton, which is the version of the most abandoned human body you can imagine of, you can think of, and he used the position of this skeleton in order to give and to decide the position of the Virgin Mary. You see how many details, how many sources Raphael gets in order to create this scene, which is a moving scene. It is not anymore symmetrical. There is not anymore the geometrical balance that he learned from Perugino, but this geometrical balance that he already had dismantled in the marriage of the Virgin, here it's completely turned into not, keep attention, into not a contemplation image, an image that you have to contemplate, that you have just to adore, but it's an image that you have to listen to. It's a story that is told in this image. Hope you got what I'm trying to communicate, what I'm trying to share with you. Hope you got how and why Raphael, after this painting, had the call from Rome, from Pope Julius II. But in order to reach this level of narration, this level of art, Raphael needed another experience. So between Perugino and the deposition, that by the way is preserved in Rome, the Galleria Borghese, and if we have time later on, I will tell you even why. And no, I will tell you now why it's in Rome. Sorry, because it's too funny. Well, this painting, as I told you, was made by Raphael for Atalanta Baglioni in Perugia. And it was there in the Church of St. Francis in Perugia for almost a century. Now, at the beginning of the 1600s, so 1 century later, one cardinal, very, very strong cardinal, he was going from Bologna to Rome, back to Rome. And he passed by Perugia. The name of this cardinal was Scipione Borghese, who's the one that created the collection that we can now admire in the Galleria Borghese, in the Borghese Gallery in Rome. He was the nephew of the Pope at that moment. So he passes by Perugia, he enters the Church of St. Francis, and he sees this painting by Raphael, painted 1 century before. He goes to the priest and says, I want this painting. And the priest responds, no, I'm sorry, I can't not give you this painting because it's been here for 100 years. It belongs to the city of Perugia. I mean, it's one of the masterpieces that we have here. I'm sorry, Cardinal. I cannot do that. The Cardinal said, okay, no problem. He goes back to Rome, and a few days later, one night, he sent his soldiers to Perugia. These soldiers opens violently the door of the church, and they steal the painting by Raphael, setting them into the Borghese Gallery. The people of Perugia starts to complain. They marches in the city against the cardinal, and they write to the Pope and saying, Pope Paul V, we want that Raphael painting back because it belongs to Perugia. And you know how the Pope answers to this request? He writes a letter to the priest of St. Francis Church saying, thank you very much for your gift. Which means that the cardinal had persuaded the uncle that he didn't want to give any painting back to the city. Anyway, it's a sad story for Perugia's people, but funny, and it's also very interesting to understand how much this cardinal could be powerful and how much Scipione Borghese got obsessed by Raphael. By the way, Scipione Borghese was also the commissioner of Caravaggio, of Bernini. I mean, he was a great collector. Anyway, 100 years later, the reputation, the fame of Raphael was still very, very, very strong. And all that he had produced was considered a treasure that deserved to be stolen, even if he was a cardinal to do that. So I was saying, between Perugino and the deposition, there was another experience that Raphael made that also allowed him to change his style so much. The experience was a visit to Florence. Why did Raphael in 1504 go to Florence? He went to Florence because there he knew that there were two great artists working, Michelangelo and Leonardo. Can you imagine? He was not avoiding the competitors. He wanted to meet his competitors. He knew that he had something to learn from those that were better than him. But he knew that he could then go beyond them, that he could surpass them somehow. So he goes to Florence, and in Florence he starts making portraits because they were the merchants, the bankers, all the bourgeois of Florence that had money to spend in the arts. These two portraits that you are seeing now, he didn't make them in Florence. He made them in Urbino. But I want to show them to you. These were the Duke and the Duchess of Urbino, Guidobaldo and Eleonora. But I want to show them to you because in a minute you will see the difference. What happens to Raphael when from Urbino and Perugia, again, you see symmetry, balance, a bit of even shyness, sadness, no? Then he goes to Florence and look at him. And he paints one of the most sensual, beautiful, real, like sensitive figures that have ever been painted in the early 1500s. Again, look at her here, look at this lady here. Raphael is able to like jump, no, to just go beyond any expectation. Who is she? We don't know. We call them the Lady of the Leocorn, which is the animal that she has on her lap. But you can see immediately if that Raphael saw Mona Lisa. Leonardo had just painted Mona Lisa when Raphael went to Florence, and he if you were if you joined my lecture about Leonardo when I was in Zambia, when I came to Zambia, maybe you remember that he kept one copy of this figure of the Mona Lisa for himself. So Raphael went to visit Leonardo in his workshop. He saw Mona Lisa and he copied the same situation with this lady sitting on a little terrace and a landscape behind. Now, the lady with the Leocorn has no other name. It's a very interesting figure because, again, a behind-the-scene story, a story that is rarely told to a public that is not made of experts. In the early 1900s, this painting, again preserved in the Galleria Borghese, was not looking like this. It was looking like this. You see, there is no Leocorn more over there. The Leocorn has disappeared, and instead of the Leocorn, you have like a piece of a wheel and a leaf in the hand of this lady. Basically, the Leocorn has been removed and turned, and the lady had been turned into Saint Catherine of Alexandria, from Alexandria. Why had they removed the Leocorn? Why had they turned her into a saint? Because the Leocorn was the mythological animal that could only be approached by a virgin. Of course, the horn was kind of a sexual symbol. And the painting, this painting, we know that I think we presume that had been ordered by the fiancé of this girl, a husband to be of this lady, who gave this portrait to his promised girl, to his wife to be, telling her, I want you to stay the same when I get back after my journey, which means stay virgin till my return. Okay. And Raphael was a great interpreter of these figures and these messages, of these secret messages. So the idea of the sexual symbol got too much, became too much maybe in the 1800s, and they turned it into a saint. Then the director of the Galleria Borghese in the early 1900s discovered this while they were restoring the painting, and removed all the over-painted figure just to take the Leocorn back. So if you go to the Galleria Borghese, you will see this now. You see this, how the life of these paintings is complicated, how they are quite fragile figures that in the past were not so well preserved as we preserve them now. After this, he paints her, which, I mean, it's a bit, like you can see, no? It's the girl in which Raphael did not turn her into a gentle figure. She's painted exactly like she was, with all the beautiful shape of her body. But the heaviness of this girl is lightened up, is, how do you say, softened up by Raphael. Look at the detail of the air that is moved by the breeze. Why does Raphael create this effect? Because he wants to show how elegant, light she was, even if her figure would not say that. Raphael is such a sensitive guy. I wrote 2 books about Raphael. One is the life of Raphael, okay? And another one, unfortunately, they're not translated into English yet, but one of them translated into Japanese if the ambassador would be interested. The other one is it's like a collection of portraits made by Raphael, because Raphael got so expert and so completely unique in making portraits, because he was feeling, he was sharing with the subjects the same feelings, and turning all the concerns of his clients into something powerful, into something interesting. Now, this is the way he made portraits. And look, now I'm gonna show you a quick series of Virgin Marys, because you can see how fast he was in changing the style. Okay, look at this. Sorry. Okay, sorry. Okay, this Virgin Mary, I can tell you, it's quite a Perugino style Virgin Mary. Look at this. This is a Leonardo style Virgin Mary. It comes from this. This is a painting by Leonardo da Vinci, made in the same period in Florence. And the idea of creating this triangle, this pyramid, comes to Raphael from this figure. Look at the foot of the Virgin Mary in the right-hand side of your screen, down below. Look at this foot, and look how much Raphael literally copied this foot from the one of the Virgin Mary over here. Incredible, no? So he loved to steal what he loved, what he liked from the painting of other painters. Now, this is a Virgin Mary with baby Jesus by Leonardo, called Madonna Bridgewater. And look how much this baby Jesus is moving, just like all the babies. I mean, the babies, they're never still like all the Jesuses that we see. When they're in the arms of their mothers, they're always trying to move. And Leonardo knew that and made this, and Raphael got the same inspiration in this figure, in which baby Jesus is moving in order to approach his cousin, John the Baptist. Or this Holy Family, Joseph on the top, the Virgin Mary, baby Jesus, Elizabeth, the mother of John the Baptist. Look how strong these figures are. Look at the body of the 2 children. It's 2 fat bodies that look like sculptures. This is Michelangelo's style. Raphael, in these years, is a sponge. He absorbs whatever he can from the greatest artists of his time, Perugino, Leonardo, Michelangelo. And thanks to a guy from Urbino, an architect from Urbino called Bramante, he gets a call to Rome from Pope Julius II. Now, Pope Julius II was, so he was completely changing the look of Rome. He wanted to tear down the old St. Peter's Basilica and build the new one. So the St. Peter's Basilica that we have today is the result of the will of Julius II, who started the new building site. And of course, it took 120 years to finish. But anyway, if it was not for Julius II, we wouldn't have the basilica that we have today. He wanted Julius II, the moment he got elected, he wanted to have a for the Pope, no? But he didn't want to live in the same apartment because he hated him. It was Alexander VI Borgia, and maybe just the name Borgia can give you the idea. Artist working. So we have another 7 minutes to end this lecture. 7-10 minutes because we lost some minutes at the very beginning, and then we start with the Q&A time. So there was a group of artists working for Pope Julius II in his apartment. And there were great artists. There was Perugino, there was Lorenzo Lotto, there was Luca Signorelli, there was all names of great artists that worked in the early 15. Of course, they were not part of the generation of Raphael, not even the generation of Michelangelo. So when he got there and he got asked, when Raphael got asked to work in these apartments for the Pope, he was the youngest one. He was only 25. So Sodoma, who was kind of dealing with this room, there were 4 rooms in the apartment. So we are in the first room where Raphael gets asked to paint a little figures, just to show he would deserve to work there or not. So he paints in this ceiling. This is a ceiling of a room where Sodoma had already painted everything. There were only 2 figures, 2 rectangles that were empty. The 2 down below, okay, the right and the left-hand side, down below. I'm going to show you the details now. These empty rectangles were painted by Raphael. Here, he painted what was considered the first move of the universe. So there is a figure that with his hand is moving the universe. And of course, the Earth is in the middle. There was not the solar system at that time. It was the Ptolemaic vision of the world with the Earth in the middle. This is the first move. Can you recall the position that this guy has? Does it look similar? Doesn't it look similar to the position of that guy in the marriage of the Virgin Mary? That is almost going out of the scene, leaning down, leaning in the front. If you go to the Vatican City and get into this room and look at the ceiling, you will see almost that this figure comes out of the ceiling, down to us. First, new idea, using the space in a different way. Second scene, painted by Raphael, the judgment of Solomon. Solomon receives 2 ladies. They both boast to be the mother, pretend to be the mother of a child. So he says, I know how to unveil, how to discover the one that is lying. He calls a guy and says, now you have to kill this guy, this little boy. He starts now moving in order to kill him. One lady is saying, no, no, stop it. The other one is saying, okay, I am not the mother, give it to her. And this, the second one, is the real mother, is the one that, I mean, in order to prevent her child to die, to be killed, offers him to the lying mother. So the wise Solomon understands this and gives the boy to the right one. But here, Raphael creates this, the murderer, as you can see, is moving, is turning around his body. So how the body occupies the space, it is something completely new for the Roman scene. Michelangelo have not painted the Sistine Chapel yet. It was the same year. In the same year, Raphael started to work in the apartment of Pope Julius II, and Michelangelo worked into the Sistine Chapel. You know what happens? After these two frescoes by Raphael, Julius II, who was, how can I say, he was a he was a decision maker, okay? This is how we would say today. So he was getting decisions in a minute. So he decides to push away, to remove all the other artists that were working there and gave the whole building site of the apartment to Raphael. He said, I only want him. He's new, he's clever, he's saying, painting something different. I want him to make my apartment. And it was the great chance, the greatest opportunity Raphael could expect. You see, when we say the behind the scene, no, because we know this. It's maybe the most famous painting ever by Raphael, the School of Athens, in the apartment of Pope Julius II. But how did he get to paint this? It's not just a question of style. It's a question of personality. It's a question of audacity. But this scene is maybe it's the, how to say, it's the political masterpiece by Raphael. I like to say that Raphael is a painter that makes a political use of art. He always moves in a very, very political way. And this scene proves that. Because the Greek philosophers, the most important Greek philosophers, ancient Greek philosophers. So in the center, you have Plato, the one with the white beard. Then you have Aristotle. Then you have other philosophers all around, and I will show you some of them. But I don't know if they ever told you. Every single philosopher has got the figures of a living figure, of a real figure, of a person that was living at the court of Pope Julius II while Raphael was working there. So this is not just a tribute to the Greek philosopher dead thousands of years before. It's a tribute to the main artist that could support Raphael in his career at the court of Pope Julius II. Artists could be quite bad. They were the most horrible competitors. They would kill to get a commission, to steal a commission from another artist. Raphael created consensus around him. For example, look down the right of your screen, right hand side of your screen. At the just behind the blue, white and blue column pillar, there are two figures, these two. One is Raphael, maybe you can recognize him. It's the one that is looking at us. The other one with his white hat, it's dressed as a painter, and he is Sodoma. So basically, this guy is the one that was working in that room before Raphael stole the job. So he gives a tribute to this guy. But of course, he says, so he also stands behind him saying, you know, he's much better than me. But the only one that is looking at us is Raphael, which means that he said, I am the author of this painting. This is not Sodoma's work. This is my work. You see how clever? This guy here, again, in the total figure, always down to the right-hand side below. The one dealing now, this is the representation of Euclides, the creator, the inventor of geometry. The head is the one of Bramante, the architect from Urbino, that was the very first promoter of Raphael at the court of Julius II. And in the behind the neck, you also have some letters with the signature of Raphael. R for Raphael, U for Urbinas from Urbino, S for Sancius, and the date 1514, the date of this fresco. But then look at this. Now, when Raphael gets to Rome, he already has a great workshop. So he's been working for 8 years as an independent artist. He has picked the best painters in the scene, young painters in the scene, to make them collaborators, his collaborators. So basically, and like you have to somehow trust me, we don't really know how much Raphael painted this scene. So how much literally he took a brush and painted over this wall, on this wall. We are sure that he made the project, that he made the sketch, okay? But, and that his collaborators were quite clever to copy it quite well, okay? So in the drawing, we are 100% sure that there is the hand of Raphael. In the painting, let's say half and half, okay? But in this case, there is a very interesting detail that I have to underline. It's the fact that in this project, there is one figure that is missing. Look at the stairway, okay? Down below the center, the stairway. The stairway is empty in here. There is only a figure that is sitting on the right-hand side. Look at the stairway here. There is a figure. There is a figure sitting and with his hand, you see, with his head on the hand. Who is he? Now, after giving a tribute to Bramante, to Sodoma, I forgot to tell you, Plato is the feature of Leonardo da Vinci, okay, who was living there the same period. So, and many other artists. So after all of these tributes, the Pope Julius II asked Raphael to also give a tribute to Michelangelo. That Raphael didn't want in his scene. He didn't want at all to give a tribute to Michelangelo. He was not a friend of Michelangelo. Michelangelo was working in the Sistine Chapel all alone without admitting anybody. Michelangelo hated every single competitor. He thought he was the best one, and maybe he was, but the idea that Raphael tried also to become his friend as he was trying with everybody really didn't he only generated opposition, hate. He was a lonely guy. Well, Raphael was always surrounded by cardinals, by artists, by ladies. They were two completely different characters. But then Raphael couldn't say no to the Pope. he had to give this tribute and include also Michelangelo in the scene. But look how he painted the figure of Michelangelo. It is the only philosopher dressed in a modern way. So he's not dressed as an ancient philosopher like all the other, okay? So even time-wise, he's set in a different dimension. Then he's writing in a very boring way something, but he's the only philosopher without anybody around him. All the other, you can see, they have young followers, followers like today, and the social networks. They're pupils that are like longing to see, to know, to listen to them. These people cannot care less about the Michelangelo. So I always say it is not a tribute. It's a kind of caricature. It's a kind of ironic way to show how much Michelangelo considered himself different, but by considering himself different, was completely isolated. Think of the rumors of how much they spoke about this figure, and they spoke about the not revenge, but the way Raphael could. I have to say, it was much better to be a friend of Raphael than an enemy, because you could never know how much he could take revenge of you. Anyway, going faster, this is a beautiful banning of Oleodora from the temple, where you can see you have figures. It's a story of the Old Testament. You have on the right and on the left hand side of the screen the figure of the Pope. Pope Julius II is portrayed in this scene because he's the one that is now protecting the temple, protecting the church. Or this, the miracle of Bolsena, the miracle in which the holy bread starts to bleed in order to show as a miracle that is the actual body of Jesus. All the, there is again, the Pope, Julius II, and all the figures behind him are his relatives. Again, a tribute to the good society of the Vatican City, of the Vatican in that moment. The liberation of St. Peter, where we have, you see all this white, foggy atmosphere painted by Raphael with a varnish on the wall. And we also have the very first down arriving on the right-hand side. You see the moon is very high and the sun is coming out from the background. The very first down ever painted in the history of art. Or the Pope Leo the Great that stops Attila the barbarian in front of Mantova, the door of Mantova, that Raphael set in front of Rome. Because in this case, the face of Pope Leo the Great is not the face of of anybody else. Is the face of the new Pope, Leo X. So Julius II died, Leo X has been elected, and he sets Leo X in this scene because he was the new host of the owner of the apartment, landlord, let's say, of the apartment. Okay, you see how always the attention, he pays the attention to the persons, pays attention to people. It's not only a beautiful, I mean, I could have told you only about the style, but this is a behind the scene story of Raphael. Last figure that I want to show you, I want to tell you about, it's maybe one of the most beautiful and seductive lady of the history of art. We call her La Fornarina. Now, you can really feel the body of this girl. That we think is the one that had stolen the heart of Raphael. Most probably, this was a girl that Raphael wanted to marry. And we think about that because she's got a little ring in her left-hand side, in the finger where we have the rings after marrying. You can see the ring, very little ring over there. Now you have to think that this ring came out again only recently in a recent restoration. Before it had been covered most probably by the collaborators of Raphael. They didn't want the people to know that he had promised to marry this girl because Raphael had died all of a sudden. And this idea of this marriage without him present would ruin the reputation of Raphael, that would have married a girl from the poor population. He had to marry somebody noble. So they covered this ring. We only discovered it recently. How did he die, you asked before? Well, Vasari, who's the great biographer of the artists of the 1500s, 14, 15, 1300s, he says that Raphael got a fever after 3 days of passionate love. Basically, we don't know whom he slept with for 3 days, but for sure, he got back home with a big fever. They to pull out a lot of blood from his body in order to heal him, but he did not, it didn't work. So basically he died with the painting of the transfiguration that you saw at the very beginning of this lecture in front of his bed, and maybe in mind this lady, which is one of the last painting he ever made. A beloved lady that he took from the common people and he turned into a Venus, because the plants that are behind her are the plants sacred to Venus. This was the power of Raphael, taking a figure, taking a poor lady and turn her into a goddess. This is the power of the art, and the power of the art of Raphael was, maybe he considered himself almost like God when he was making this kind of operation with his paintings. So thank you very much for listening. Now, I don't want to waste too much of your time, and let me stop sharing, and I want to go directly to the questions. Are you okay in the room?
Yes, Costantino. Thank you. Go ahead with the questions. Then we will ask also here if anybody wants to.
Okay. Now, Raphael, rivalries, of course, as I told you, his rivalries were, well, let's say Michelangelo for sure. Leonardo had a very good relationship with him. That's why he also gave this tribute in the School of Athens. But basically, he was not like kind of a guy that you could compete with, because he was always able to create consensus, to just weaken up all your opposition. He has got a great personality. What was Raphael's first painting style called? There's not a kind of name. We can say Perugino style if you want. Why did she kill her uncle? It was not she, it was him. It was the son. She killed his uncle because he was member of both families. So he was working and with the opposers of the Baglioni family. What happened to Raphael's mother? We know almost nothing about her. You know, women at that age were not really on the scene. No, they were always behind. So we know that she kept on taking care of her son, but then at a certain point, she's got a very nice name. She was called Magia, which means magic. But we have not really so much information. Most probably she passed away, and Raphael also took care of her funeral because he always got a workshop open in Urbino, and he never cut the relationship with Urbino. Okay, this was the questions and the Q&A. Okay, this is it, Ambassador. Are there any other questions? If there are not, I only have one more information to say.
I have
you are mute.
I'm sorry. Yes, I have. First of all, I would like to invite anybody from the room if there is question. I will also take the chance to ask a question because I was very interested. We always hear about artists in a very singular way. Singular means we hear the story of Leonardo, we hear the story of Michelangelo, of Raphael, and it was, at least for me, very interesting to hear that they were somehow interacting in Rome in the court of the Pope. And you gave us many details, very interesting. I understand that Raphael had a different approach with that regard, and I was maybe interested in asking a little bit more about his relation with Leonardo, if he had, because you remember your visit here about Leonardo da Vinci, and that was so very interesting. And I understand there was I can guess, an admiration from Raphael to Leonardo, but somehow the story were, they were different in age, of course, I understand, but they were a connection. So I'd like to ask a little bit about that. Before inviting, just to share with all of you that Minister Lubinda, the Minister of Justice, called me before. He was supposed to be here with us because he's very interested, very fond of art, but unfortunately he was stuck in the parliament and unfortunately couldn't be with us. But I told him that, as I said, the event is possible to be watched again on our YouTube channel. Please, you can come for your question.
Yes. First of all, thank you very much. I think we're all in awe of your knowledge, the research you've done. It's absolutely fascinating. I just have one sort of question. Probably it will sound a little bit naive. There is, in these, particularly in the symmetrical compositions, a group on the left from the viewer's point of view and a group on the right. And one of my questions here, I've probably got two questions, is there any significance in the placement of those groups, the ones on the right from the viewer's point of view and those on the left? I'm thinking in particular of the Raphael's version of the marriage of Mary and Joseph, because he reverses Perugino's orientation. And in fact, Perugino's, if I got it right, Perugino's Joseph and his posture, I think I've got, yeah, let's look at the painting. The posture of, let's see,
sorry,
is reversed.
Here.
Yeah, the posture in Perugino's Joseph is sort of taken over by Mary, and I wonder if there's any significance in that.
Okay. Okay. No, I have to say there is not a real significance. Somehow, in some scenes, there is kind of a tradition that it's always like repeated. For example, we don't have figures like this in Raphael's career, but when the Annunciation, for example, the Annunciation, when the Archangel Gabriel announces to the Virgin Mary that she would become the mother of Jesus, the angel 99% of the time is on the, let's say, if we see the painting, it's on the left-hand side, and the Virgin Mary is on the right-hand side. This is because at the very beginning, in the 1300s, even before, the words of the angel were basically written on the painting. And so in order to be read, they had to go from the left-hand side to the right-hand side. And this gave the tradition to this position of the angel and the Virgin Mary. In this case, no, I have to say there is nothing written that may make us think that there is a specific reason why Raphael reversed this, this scene. Most probably it was another detail to say, okay, I'm copying you, but I'm making something different than you, I may say. But I mean, historically, nothing's been written. And if there is nothing written, I'm always quite shy to give answers, or to give explanations, I have to say, because then we're not anymore in the field of history. We get into the field of hypothesis and another kind of science, let's say. Thinking of the relationship between Leonardo and Raphael instead, well, as I told you, as I told you, Raphael went. So just one question, and then another answer, and then another question. So Raphael, basically, as I told you, could recognize when an artist was better than him, and himself, and a great one. And I have to say that Leonardo, who was not so easy to be consulted, to be like, it was quite a lonely guy as well, not like Michelangelo, but he only loved to stay close to his very, very close group of friends and collaborators. Raphael managed to open up the heart of Leonardo. Leonardo spent only 3 years in Rome while Raphael was there. And we know that they shared some commissioners, some collectors. We know that, for example, Raphael made the drawing of a villa on the Ianiculum Hill, where Leonardo was going quite often. So they shared the same kind of groups. Now, we don't know about any collaboration, but as I told you, Raphael absorbed a lot by Leonardo. But in terms of a human relationship, it was a very good relationship between them. But then Leonardo was actually living a completely different period of his life than Raphael. So right after Rome experience, he went to France, and he died there. So we can make links between the two, thanks to the documents that recognize and tells about their presence in the same homes, in the same environments, let's say, which is something we cannot say at all about Michelangelo, that was not absolutely sharing anything with both of them.
Monday, Professor. So there's a school of Raphael.
Yeah.
And what impact did it have on future artists?
Yeah. Of course there is. We have to think that after Raphael and after Michelangelo, there is a whole period in the history of art that we call mannerism. What is the manner that influences the mannerism. What is this manner? It's the manner, which means the style of Raphael and Michelangelo, that become the model for every single artist that would approach the business of art. I mean, the taste of the society kept on loving Raphael and Michelangelo, but I may say Raphael more than Michelangelo. In the 1600s, there's an artist called Bellori who writes an essay entitling him The Idea of Beauty, L'idea del bello. What is this beauty he tells about? It's the beauty of Raphael. It's the way he manages to give elegance to figures, to express feelings without ever going beyond the limit. Is a way to give life to figures that always keep the, I may say, the like the balance without going too much. It's, let's say, it's what later on in the 1600s they will call decor, in Latino decorum. So the artist will have to stick to the decorum. And this decorum was only present in Raphael's painting. So literally, we have a whole century that looks at Raphael at his manner, the mannerism, before Baroque age, but even during Baroque age, and then the Neoclassicism, and then Romantic age, Raphael has always been there. Even more than a current. It is not a current. I cannot say that there is a current like Caravaggio, for example, or like Leonardo. Had his pupils that for a certain short period painted like him. Raphael went beyond. It was one of the attendees online asked, so Raphael is very famous. I mean, we always hear about Leonardo and Michelangelo. I didn't know Raphael was so famous. I repeat, in the history of art, of the Western art, Raphael is more significant than any other artist. His contribution influenced every single artist that's going on the scene. In the academy, it was the school for all the artists, they were always studying Raphael before and more any other artist.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other question? Okay. Professor Dorazio, thank you very much. You mentioned before, upon a question of our friends online, about the mother of Raphael and the role of women in that time. So I would like to say about the role of women in art that our next event will be on the 5th of March. Will be a webinar on women in art, because we want to celebrate the day dedicated to women, highlighting the role of women artists in the history of art.
And you will have Professor Lollobrigida, Consuelo Lollobrigida, who's a great lecturer.
Yes, she will attend, she will contribute with her intervention. I would like to add that I know that your next book is exactly on this subject, so I'm sure that we will have the opportunity to discuss even more this very interesting subject. But again, thank you very much for
this. Let me just tell Latita that I will answer writing. I will write the answer online over the question that she just posed.
Okay, Professor Dorazio, thank you again. Thank you very much. See you next time. Thank you.
See you all. Thank you very much.